Alright, I thought I'd do a little quick port review and MIDI review for Super Meat Boy on Switch. So, overall, it's a pretty great port. The main difference between this and the PC version is there's quite a bit of load times when you load a world. This is a procedurally generated game, if you're not aware. It's getting a lot of flack for being an auto runner. It's actually completely procedurally generated, so what it's doing during the cutscenes is it's loading all the chunks and stuff so that you can play seamlessly. Other than that, there's not many issues. There are a couple patches that have released on the PC version that involve things like a quick level chunk restart button and things like that. Those things are not on Switch yet, but other than that, it's pretty much got full feature parity. See the load times here. In the corner you see it spinning. You can't skip this cutscene until you get past this point. So they added a punch. I think the punch adds a lot of dynamics to how you play the game. In the original Super Meat Boy, you were effectively defenseless. So there's actually quite a bit of fighting in this, and it does add a little bit to the platforming as well. Actually, I'd argue it adds a lot. It is an auto runner, but they do a lot with this auto running mechanic or gimmick than you'd think. It's just the problem is in the first two worlds you don't really get to use a lot of those mechanics. They introduce a lot of those mechanics later on. I think this game actually does about as much as it can with the concept of not being able to stop running and also not being able to turn around. There's the punch mechanic. Basically, when you punch something, it resets your punch again, so there's a lot of unique puzzles and stuff with that. This game, I had a very bad first impression with it. I thought it was a real pale comparison to the first game. I definitely do feel like the first game is better overall for platforming. Biggest problem with this game is nobody's going to have, like, the same experience. It's not like playing, like, you know, a Mega Man game or a Contra game or a Call of Duty game or something, where, you know, the campaign is going to be the same for everybody. It is procedurally generated, so I came across a level chunk I couldn't figure out how to beat when I played this on PC, but when I bought it on Switch, I actually got a pretty good level chunk, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more. I think that's what makes this game very hard to review. You know, generally in roguelikes or like procedurally generated games, it's just things like the enemy layouts or the items you get, or, you know, the seed of the run and things like that. But here, the seed completely dictates all of the gameplay, so it can be a little frustrating. There definitely are a lot of level chunks in this game that basically revolve around solving a puzzle. Puzzles aren't inherently bad. You know, I'm not a very big fan of puzzles in games, mostly because I play a lot of gameplay-oriented games and I feel like they get in the way. But in this game, you have the problem of the levels are like, I'd say, 3 to 4 times longer than the ones in the original game. And when a lot of that is puzzles, it can mean you get stuck on the same chunk for a really long time. If you go on, like, the Super Meat Boy Reddit, there's a couple threads about people getting stuck on a level chunk for an hour. I feel like that's really out of place in a game like this. The whole thing is it's supposed to be quick, easily, you know, consumable levels that you can get through. Obviously you're supposed to get stuck at some point, but it's not supposed to be just, you know, you can't figure out the puzzle. I don't really think it really fits in this game. That was probably my biggest complaint with it. I think the boss fights are actually pretty creative as well. I feel like this game does a lot right, but trying to focus on puzzles... Not focus on puzzles, but have too many level chunks that involve puzzles and getting stuck instead of it being your, you know, your skill or whatever, not knowing how to solve the chunk being the problem. That was probably my biggest issue with this game overall, but it is very fun to play in a speedrun setting. Like, play this and just knock out a run in an hour. Feels really fun. I've done 2 playthroughs of this game so far, and it's been fun for that purpose. There is one thing I should definitely mention as soon as I get back to the menu here. It's going to be a doozy for people who like the original. It's something that's not being talked about much either, which I find kind of odd. The music is a mixed bag. I find this track to be really annoying. I don't think country has any place in a fast-paced game like Super Meat Boy. Danny B is pretty obviously absent. There's obviously been a lot of drama with Team Meat and stuff. A lot of members have left and things. The band that does the music for this, I think the best music they've done would be the Binding of Isaac remake. Like, that music actually fits quite well, and people seem to have a pretty good overall consensus for it. Whereas this, the music is pretty repetitive. There are some good tracks, but it's definitely a mixed bag. I feel like music actually does mean a lot more in this game than other games like it, because you can potentially be stuck on the same thing for a really long time. You want to make sure that the music is kind of helping you go as well. That's one thing that the first game really excelled at. This, not so much. I don't hate the soundtrack, but it's not as good as you'd expect. I don't think anybody really likes this track. Play through the first world here, and I'll show a boss fight. And then I'll get into the worst thing about this game, besides the puzzles. Puzzles are kind of hard to show. Like I said, this is like probably one of the hardest games to review out of anything that's come out in a while, and it's not because it's a challenging game. Obviously there's people that can review games that are challenging by nature and design, but with this you have completely procedurally generated levels. And the level chunks vary from stuff like this, which is just skillful platforming, to getting stuck on legit puzzles, and it's frustrating to say the least. A lot of people have been pointing out. I thought it was just me, because I definitely do get, admittedly, very agitated with puzzles pretty quickly, but a lot of other people are pointing out the same thing. I think it's an attempt to add more variety to the game, but usually when I get those level chunks, I just end up skipping that level completely. One of those kind of dumb level chunks where they want you to go all the way back. For the most part, the game is pretty well designed around the fact that you can't turn around, but you get stuff like this where you question why it's the way it is. Like, why did Meat Boy forget how to turn around? You can turn around in the cutscenes, but you get here and you get stuck on kind of dumb stuff like this. Kind of an odd decision, because it's like they're trying to keep you moving forward and keep the pacing good, but when you get stuck on puzzles for a long time, that doesn't work either. But I guess there's only so many ways you can arrange these level hazards and stuff without having to resort to puzzles at some point. I can understand how that would be challenging from a game development standpoint. but it's definitely the weakest part of this game overall. Alright, so let's show a boss fight. Then I'm gonna give you guys the worst part of this game. So the bosses are actually pretty creative. They definitely incorporate a lot of the design from the first game, where they're frustrating at first, but they're all designed to be beaten in like less than a minute, so you really only have to play perfectly for a while. Even the last boss, I think a deathless run of the last boss is like, I don't know, 30-35 seconds, and a decent chunk of that is scripted events and stuff. The bosses do feel better than the first game. They're a lot more interactive. You know, the first game definitely had some bosses like Little Slugger and the big golem guy, I don't remember his name, where you kind of just stand there and wait. There's nothing like that in this game. They're all very interactive. I'm actually very impressed with the boss fights. I think the boss fights are one of the better overall things about this game. They definitely kind of changed what a boss fight can be in a platformer. You know, we've kind of been jumping on the heads of platformer bosses for like over 30 years now. They definitely do a lot of inventive things here. A lot of the mechanics from that respective world are actually used as well. They all feel really, really satisfying to beat. It's really satisfying to learn how to play them. I'd say the biggest problem with this game is there's a real lack of material unlockables. I'm gonna give you the bad news. There's all these characters here, right? They all play exactly the same. There is no... Actually, there is one character that plays completely differently. I won't spoil it, but it's not something you would want to go for. If you played the first game, you should have a good idea of who it is, but... Basically, these are all skins, and they're like the only real unlockable in this game, so if you're looking for something as satisfying as, say, unlocking the guy in the first game, you're going to be really disappointed with this. There's not really a whole lot of reason to unlock them. I think the best way to play this game, with a minimal amount of frustration, due to puzzles and stuff, is just to speedrun it. This is a great speedrun game. I think they nailed the replay value. It's just, I guess because this is a procedurally generated platformer and it's also an auto-runner, they couldn't think of ways to create new inventive mechanics to motivate you to unlock the characters and then have them work on the 7,000 level chunks that compose the game. I guess that's a problem. I could see from a game design standpoint how difficult that would be, but it's definitely disappointing. I don't really feel too inclined to unlock a lot of these characters because they don't really play any differently. It's a shame because they put a lot of work into them. They all have mostly unique sprites and stuff. It's just, material-wise, there's no real reason to get them. There are a couple things you can do. Back out here. If you beat the game, you can do New Game Plus. Apparently that gives you harder level chunks, which in this game might mean annoying puzzles. I'm not quite sure what that means or not, but all the pacifiers for the unlockables and stuff can't be gotten, they can't be obtained on a first playthrough, so you definitely have to go through and try to find them, but like I said, I don't know if it's worth it. I think this game is perfectly fine just playing through to the final boss and watching the ending, and then making a new seed. It definitely has more replay value than the first game. The first game definitely was lacking in replay value. I did pretty much everything on the first game, and at that point I never really wanted to play it again. Here you have pretty much an infinite amount of different campaigns that you can go through, and because this is kind of like a roguelike in that the campaigns are different every time, there's a lot of replay value there, just minus other stuff you'd expect in roguelikes, like you know, item builds and synergies and things like that. There's none of that here, but it is very fun to play through more than once. This is actually my third playthrough, and I'm not tired of the game yet. I feel like if I did try to unlock all this stuff, I just get sick of the game faster, and there's not really much of a material reason to do so. You're basically unlocking, like, DLC costumes for free. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all it is. If that's enough for you, then I think you'll get a lot of replay value out of this game, but if you're like me and you don't want to do all that stuff because it's not worth the amount of frustration you're going to be dealing with, then you can still play through this game a lot and still get a good value out of it. There has been a lot of polish to the game since the Switch version came out on the PC version, but obviously, you know how console games work. It takes a really long time to get patches certified and stuff. So I know that the quick restart button definitely does help a lot, especially with collecting the pacifiers. If you play the game on Switch right now and you do care about the unlockables, I would recommend waiting for the patch, honestly, because a lot of times you can actually clear the level chunk and you can't go back. You have to restart the whole level. So that definitely does improve the game a lot, but it is not on the Switch version yet. So I'd say that's probably the biggest problem with this version is they've done quite a bit of polish and stuff, and it's not available on here yet. I don't know how long it will take. They haven't really said anything, but overall, I enjoyed this game. I had a very bad first impression with it. I think it has a bad first impression with everybody, and everybody's tolerance for puzzles and getting stuck on the same thing for long periods of time is different. Also, literally every playthrough of this game is different. So, I'd say out of all the games I've reviewed on this channel, this is probably the hardest one. Because I was on the brink of refunding it when I bought it on PC, but then I stuck with it and I actually did enjoy it quite a bit. I recommend if you get frustrated, remember that you can skip levels. You can only have to do 4 out of 6 levels in a world to fight the boss. If you're getting frustrated, just skip the levels, and if you feel like you're not going to get your money's worth because you're not unlocking everything, I hope you remember that they're all just basically glorified skins. If you just want to keep making new files and unlock things that way, or just play, try to improve your time and see the rest of the level chunks, I can't recommend it enough. It's a very divisive game. It can have very polarizing emotions. It can produce very polarizing emotions while you're playing it because you can get an endless amount of puzzles, and then the next level can just be straight speed running. I don't know how they can fix that, really. I feel like the post-game stuff in this game is very disjointed because there's not really any real reason to do it unless you want a skin. And I don't know about you guys. I don't do intense grinding for skins in video games. I'll do it for something material that changes the way the game is played, but obviously I've been playing a lot of Neo 2 and stuff lately. I'm doing the grinding in that because I like the game and the gear can change how the game is played. But here, there's none of that, and I don't know if they'll address that later on. They did say that there has been some plans for post-launch support, like maybe a level editor or something, but overall, the way the game is now, and once they have the quick restart patch on Switch, I would definitely recommend it. It's fun to play through. The cutscenes are beautiful, they're really well animated, and they tell a pretty nice story. That should get you through at least one playthrough, but if you find yourself liking the core gameplay mechanics, which the mechanics are quite good, it's just, it never stops being frustrating when you go the wrong direction and you can't turn around. The game does a lot with the simple mechanics that it gives you at first. Things get increasingly more complex as you go on, so I definitely recommend just at least trying to beat it once. Anyway, I hope that helps you guys. When the patch comes out on Switch, I'll let you guys know. Thanks for watching.